Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
Evan, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Glad to be here, Bernie. Thanks for having me.
So, for some of the people know, I kind of did it in the introduction that we're together now. We work together down at Impact Zone Golf here in Naples, Florida. I know that I see you running around. You're going to Tiburon and you're going to, to the world headquarters, and you always have something going on.
Got to wear lots of hats there.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about our audience about how you decided to get involved in golf, and really where this dream that you're starting to live all began.
All right. To be completely honest, it kind of started all by chance. I was in my last semester. I was a kinesiology student at Penn State, and I needed to do an internship. It was going to be a semester-long internship, and I was scratching for ideas, and I turned down a few, and I was really glad that I did. Having lunch with my younger brother and a good friend of ours, both of them in the PGM program, and they said, "Hey, you know golf, and you know the body. I mean, that's your major. You're a TA, some functional anatomy classes and things like that. Why not apply it to golf and make it fun?" I always thought that maybe I was going to be a PT or go into physical therapy. Worked at an outpatient place back home for about a year, and I just thought it was kind of slow. Maybe try to find something a little more exciting, a little more sports-oriented. And just talking to them, and they said, "Hey, why don't you check out this place, Joey D Golf, down in Jupiter. He's training a lot of big names right now, and it feels like it'd be something that you'd be really good at, and it would be fun." So just happened to give him a call. They said, "Yeah, that sounds great. When can he come down?" So it just, matter of fact, just turned out just like it did. My first day down there, they were shooting commercials, the Journey to Better commercial, their Strixon with Keegan. So that was the first face that I saw when I opened up the door, and that kind of let me know what I was going to be in for down there. So the whole thing was a great experience, just being down there, learning from Joey, learning from the other coaches there, seeing what goes into, training elite players. You had two players at the time there, and they were in the top 10. You had a player of the year. You had Ricky, who was winning the Players' Championship. That kind of thing. It was just a really cool environment to be around. And it wasn't just pros. It was everybody that was grinding in there. You had your web.com, you had your LPGA, Symetra Tour, big break people coming in. Kids coming out of college just trying to make it on the smaller tours, Canadian Tour, Latin America. Kind of got to see it all. And it was just cool to see that kind of environment where nobody was really starstruck by anybody else, because you look at each other and everybody was just grinding, just try to get better, just on a different level. So it was a really, really great experience. I got to work at PGA National for a little while I was there too, so just kind of ventured out trying to do some different things. That was great experience, awesome place. Got to meet a lot of great people there as well. And then it just so happened that one day Bobby and Mariana came over, and they said, "Oh, we want to look at your place, ask everybody some questions," and I got to know them that day, and I ended up getting asked, "Would you like to come over and help out opening up the biomechanics department at Impact Zone?" And I said, absolutely. It would be a great experience. I'm sure that there's not a lot of kids my age that ever get offered that kind of opportunity to help open up something on a ground level like that. I didn't have anything holding me down over there. All my family, girlfriend back up in Pennsylvania still, so I thought, why not just try something new, try something different, and no looking back, and I've been extremely glad that I have. It's been an awesome experience getting to know everybody on our team, getting to know a lot of new faces over on the West Coast of Florida, and it's just been a really fast-moving last 3 years, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been an awesome experience.
It's amazing how things just all of a sudden happen like that. Here your brother and a friend just kind of put that seed in there, and you said, "Hey, yeah, what the heck?
Why not?
I can try it." And
yep.
And wow, look at this. Next thing you know, you're with probably one of the top fitness guys in the golf industry,
Absolutely.
training under him, and then and now you're built forging your own way with Impact Zone,
Hmm.
and who knows, you might be the next top guy in the world when it comes to that. By the time, because you're young and you got a long way to go,
That's for sure.
and it's that's where it all begins. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool stuff. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what you have out there at Impact Zone. Of course, I know, but our audience doesn't. So tell us a little bit about your your routine office there and the things that you do.
All right. I mean, as far as where I get to do most of my work, I'm back in the gym. So we have our own kind of golf specific gym back in there. A lot of open room, um, free weight, some machines, that kind of thing. So I like the openness that we have that we created there. And of course, Joey um, came on board and helped us design and kind of showed us exactly what we would need and kind of helped us lay everything out, which was really helpful with him. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I'm back in the gym. Sometimes I'll go back and forth between the bays, or hitting bays that we have. I like to sit in on lessons that I have and kind of watch either you or Josh or Alex or whoever may be giving a lesson and kind of be like an add-on for them. It's always cool to kind of create that sense of teamwork for a player and give them almost a sense of what it feels like to to almost be a tour player in some respects. I mean, you think, oh, you come in and all of a sudden you have your own biomechanics coach, you have your own swing coach, you have your own fitter and putting specialist, and they're all kind of behind you. So it's a really cool environment that we create. Um, and the players really react well to that. I mean, they kind of get excited when they come in. They're excited to see everybody and talk to Dan real quick about their putting or their putter, talk to you about what they're doing on the course, and then talk to me about what hurts them or how they're not moving or something like that. And it's just a fun kind of environment to be working in and exactly what I was kind of looking for as far as a career and a profession. So,
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place. I mean,
yep.
and with the equipment that we have and the team that's there and everybody being able to do different things um, that they're specialty at, it definitely does make the student feel like they're surrounded by a team and almost like they're a pro,
Yeah.
which is some really cool stuff because this is exactly what the pros do.
Hmm.
They surround themselves with different people that specialize in different areas. So, for our audience, explain a little bit about biomechanics and how it works in golf, and really how it relates to golf. And I know that we do assessments. So if you're doing a biomechanic assessment, give us a rundown as to what kind of, in layman's terms, what that really is, because I'm sure there's many people out there in the audience who know what that is, but there's a lot who don't.
Right. So, I mean, just giving you a run through of what a typical assessment would be like that I do along with the swing coaches. Um, First thing that I need to know is how much of their perception of reality can we really start to trust. So usually we do a fun little assessment and test with them just to see how well they're sensing things, how they're moving, how they're interacting with the ground is a big one with me. Just trying to see, are they, like most golfers, unfortunately, extremely upper body minded, or do they have a pretty decent athletic sense of how their entire body is working together and how all the signals are being sent to each other. So that's first thing that I try to establish, and sometimes it surprises players when they come in for sure. And then after that, it's kind of a simple range of motion, functional movement kind of test, but we relate it to the dynamics. So our 5 dynamics we teach around. So I look at wrist mobility a lot, wrist strength, shoulder mobility, how well can they separate upper body from lower body, those kind of things, how mindful and how aware they are of specific muscle groups and specific movements is usually my biggest one. You'll always hear me saying awareness and mindfulness are really the keys to understanding your golf body at a higher level. So you see the players out there who you might be able to pick out just one specific move, whether it's how well they use their lower body separately from their upper body, or how well they can create a good sense of lag. And they're usually the players that have the better sense of, again, body mindfulness and body awareness. And therefore, they could start to really assess and correct themselves that much better when they're out on the course when you or I don't have our eyes on them.
So when you're doing that, that gives you an idea of really how aware they are of their body, and then you let them know that, and then what would be the next step? Would we give them exercises or things to do, drills, to help them start to build that awareness and have a better sense of how to create ground force?
For sure. So, I mean, we always say, you and I both, with the technology that we have, we don't want to guess anymore. We don't have to guess with the technology that we have. And I think that's our greatest asset, is having the science and technology behind it, whether we're using the pressure plate, our swing catalyst pressure plate. I think that's one of the best tools to start to really bridge that awareness of mind and body in your golf swing where I mean, it doesn't lie. A lot of times you run into those players say, oh, I don't do this in my swing, or of course I do this in my swing. And now we can start to bridge that gap between perception and reality a lot better, and how they're using their ground, how they're using their biggest muscles, what we refer to as the workhorse. I'm sure you've mentioned it on here before. But again, your biggest muscles, your core, your hips, your legs, that kind of thing. Yeah, between that, and then I'll, of course, give them a lot of slow motion drills, whether it's with balls or bands. A lot of times it's removing the club from their hand as well. Again, you'll always run into majority of the players, as soon as they feel that grip in their hand, all of a sudden they start to revert back to those old movement patterns and their old habits that they have. So I really like reinforcing movements without a club first, doing it slow. Eyes closed is a big one. Again, they could only focus on their feel. I mean, we get 80% of our information through our day just through our eyes. So we rely pretty heavily, in some cases too heavily, on that. So again, a lot of eyes open, eyes closed, just to trust the feel, to gain a little bit more proprioception and muscle awareness as to what's working and in what sequence, that kind of thing. And then, of course, we just relate it to whatever the miss is that you're seeing or one of the swing coaches are seeing. Whether we say, all right, we need more load or create a better sense of load, or where they're at the top of their backswing, something like that, or creating a little bit more lag in their downswing, or what does it really feel like to get a good flat left wrist, those kind of things. So it's a really nice blueprint. It's a nice kind of skeletal system, having the 5 dynamics to always refer back to. And again, us being not style-based, it simplifies a lot of things. It gives players a lot of freedom to be naturally athletic as well, which I really enjoy about this system.
Sure. So a lot of people out there, who listen to the show, some of them are familiar with impact zone golf. Some of them are not. It's not like all I do is talk about the 5 dynamics on the show or things like that. I really don't touch base with them that much. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
So, for our listening audience, I'm going to have you explain those 5 dynamics, so that they better understand kind of when you talked about load and you talked about lag and you talked about flat lead wrist and things like that. Some of those things I'm sure that people understand, but to get a better understanding, how do they fit into this teaching model, I guess we could say, that we refer to these 5 things consistently all the time. We keep going back to them, mm-hmm. To make players better and more consistent.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just a quick run through of them. What Bobby saw as his time as a player, as his time as a commentator, as his time on the senior PGA, he saw a ton of different styles, obviously. But what he picked out of all the styles and how well everybody was striking the ball on tour versus probably all the amateurs or the pro-ams that he might have played in. Seeing, I mean, you're looking at polar opposites there is a pretty clear example, but they're kind of the non-negotiables of how you hit the best shots that you can, how you get the best contact that you can. So number 1, just being a nice flat lead wrist at impact, making sure that that's not breaking down, create a real good stable club face at impact. Number 2, just being that 4-inch in front swing bottom, so the bottom of your swing arc is about 4 inches past the ball, so making sure that divot is the kind of the widest and deepest point 4 inches past the ball. is what we're looking at, just again for cleaner contact, being able to control the ball, make it do what you want to do. Just touched before on load, and what we look for there is how well you're hinging your wrist. So to get anatomical on everybody, radial deviation with your left wrist. What does that look like at the top of your swing? Us not being style-based, don't really care where or when that happens. As long as it does happen by the top, you look at the players out there, you look at a Danny Willett or a DJ, really early loaders of the club. First thing they do is they set their wrist. Great. You look at someone like a Steve Stricker, waits until he gets to the very top of his swing to load the club. He also creates load. It doesn't really, for us, matter where or how, but as long as you do, just because that's a really strong lever when you talk about levers in the body and creating and storing potential power. A lot of times players get wrapped up with saying, oh, I need a huge shoulder turn. I'm trying to improve my turn or my twist or my coil, whatever they like to call it. And I mean, we could show you a handful of players who are long hitters on tour that they don't have a big turn. But what all of them do have is a great sense of load and using that as a really strong, reliable lever in their backswing for creating and storing potential energy. Number 4 being lag. So how well are they retaining their load in their downswing? So Bobby talks about it being a quantity and a quality. Quantity is the measurable aspect of it. So we could actually draw an angle and say, hey, this is where you're at with how much lag that you're creating on your downswing. Quality is just being how deep into the downswing are you retaining that. So again, measurables, we like to have them. We like to have them visually, numerically, just so there's something that the player can kind of hold on to and get a sense and a feel in their head, and again start to bridge that perception and reality of what they're feeling and what's actually happening. And then number 5, lastly, is just a straight plane line. So making sure that that club is swinging down a straight plane line towards their target, and then learning how to manipulate that for some of the better players, granted, if they want to start to fade it or draw it or do any kind of shaping with their shots as well.
Now, through the things that you've done and with Impact Zone, how do you find is the best way for them to achieve those dynamics?
So for me, you talk about a delivery system, and for me that is the workhorse. So you could have all of those things, really, really great dynamics, but for me, if you don't really have a strong motor that are driving all those 5 things and creating them, it's going to be real inconsistent, and really it's going to lack a lot of power as well. I mean, you talk about a flat left wrist and creating lag. A lot of times those things are somewhat passive, I'll say, in a swing, versus you're not actively trying to create it with your hands and that kind of thing. You can get into a lot of misses, a lot of inconsistencies when you're just going straight attention from your hand or your brain to the fastest moving parts of your body. A lot of times we'll hear you and I both, people say, I get in trouble at the bottom with kind of flipping it, or I'm trying to release it. And a lot of times even some of the best players aren't really focusing hard on releasing it, again, because that's one of the fastest moving parts of their swing. But what they can control and feel is their workhorse and how that's moving them throughout their swing, and letting the fastest moving parts of your swing, your arms, your hands, the club, be a little bit more passive, and in that sense create a little bit more lag more easily, and then a flatter left wrist instead of us trying to create that on our own. And again, that's when you start to see a lot of breakdowns and a lot of inconsistencies, because it's hard to feel. I mean, even for the best players that might be swinging at 125 miles an hour, it's really tough to create that good sense of trust and feel when things are happening that fast.
Sure. So in other words, layman's terms, get that workhorse or get that torso moving to maintain those dynamics. Let the workhorse deliver the club to the ball, not your arms and hands.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then even relating it to the 5th dynamic, a lot of times if I'm in a lesson with yourself, or again, Alex or Josh or whoever it may be, I might not even touch on anything above their waist. Just talking how their trace is, and when I talk about trace, when they're on the pressure plate, how is their pressure moving from foot to foot? And a lot of times, as soon as we start to give them a better understanding of that, again, like we said, the fastest moving parts of your swing are going to want to follow the strongest parts of your swing coming from your workhorse. So people are usually pretty surprised how much we can really start to improve the consistency of their club path just by giving them a more solid foundation. So just being a little bit more aware of where their pressure is moving. Are they getting too lost in their toes and they're coming over top as a result of that? And we'll just say, all right, let's get just a little bit more balance, a little bit more athletic feeling, maybe a little bit more heel to heel instead of getting lost in your toes. And all of a sudden you see that club path really start to level out and come a lot closer to zero. And in some people's cases, they could finally start coming from the inside if they want to start to hit that little draw that they might never have been able to hit before. Again, just recruiting those bigger posterior muscles to use them as an anchor to kind of keep your swing a little bit more down the line instead of kind of losing it and be getting inconsistent again with your club path.
Sure. So what are some drills that players can use to, let's say, engage that ground force, engage that workhorse a little bit better, and what would you say are good drills to help them build power?
So I really like working with medicine balls, and the thing is, 4 pounds is usually enough. I don't go much higher, even with some of the stronger clients that I have, much higher than 8 a lot of the times. And it's more with the golf specific, the tosses, that kind of thing, sequentially, whether it's a step and a toss. Again, using the step as kind of your over accentuation of the workhorse, getting that started. I love having people just with arms stuck to their sides if they pretend like they have a belt around their arms, and it's just keeping elbows nice and close, and just again focusing on using your workhorse to make that toss into the wall or into a rebounder or to another person. Just not using your arms, just relying on those big muscles to kind of make that kind of toss. Even bouncing a ball down a line, if you have a target line, a lot of golfers get surprised that they can't do something like a golf-specific motion and bounce either a medicine ball or even something like a basketball down their target line. A lot of time their body miss shows up, and it makes that ball, whatever it is that they're throwing, do the same exact thing as the miss that shows up in their swing. I'll refer a lot to body misses versus swing misses, but in reality, they're usually pretty close, pretty related to what they're doing. So when somebody's throwing that ball, generally their first throw or their first miss is going to be very much like what their miss is out on the course when they're actually hitting a ball as well. So just pick out a target line for yourself, give yourself a little step, bounce it right by where the ball would be teed up usually, and try to send it down your target line and just start to train workhorse and your fifth dynamic, your straight plane line at the same time there.
So will that also help their release point as to because some players say they'll have a little bit of an early release and they'll end up, hitting the ball left. Some will try to hold that release off and push it. So this is a drill that will help that too, because if you're letting the ball go and it goes left of your target line, then you're releasing it too soon, correct? And your arms are getting too much involved. And vice versa. If you're leaving it out to the right, then your workhorse is, I don't want to say your workhorse is getting too involved, but maybe lateral shift of the workhorse is happening a little bit too much.
Yeah, I'll definitely say the release in this drill is definitely an aspect of it. I would call it secondary, if anything, again, being workhorse and fifth dynamic kind of being the first, but definitely release point and how the release is related to your workhorse. Again, if you kind of have a lazy workhorse, people just kind of hang back and flip it left, like that would be like their low left shot, like a duck hook kind of miss. Hands get too involved because their body kind of shuts down. And just the same, if somebody is, just too much lateral shift and not getting enough kind of pelvic rotation towards the end of it to help square them up to their target, if they just keep shifting, but they never have any rotation, then you start to see them, again, get lost into their toes and kind of leave that out right. Again, talking if we were a right-handed player. So the relation between the workhorse and the release point, for sure, is an aspect of that drill as well.
So what is a drill that players can use to help engage more hip rotation to gain ground force on the backswing? as opposed to pelvic rotation. We see a lot of players in there, and they have a tendency to, when they make their backswing, to have more of a pelvic rotation and not a hip rotation. So explain kind of what the difference between the two is.
Sure.
And how hip rotation can actually benefit in power and also in weight shift, and also keeping the head a little bit more steady as opposed to a big lateral move on the way back to the, on the backswing. And now the player has to make a big lateral move back, and now timing issue is really going crazy and is never correct.
Sure. So just first off, difference between the two, pelvic rotation and hip rotation. A lot of times on TV or even in past instruction, you'll always hear coaches, announcers say, oh, he has a lot of hip rotation in his swing. Just talking again anatomically, what you're witnessing and what you're seeing is really their entire pelvic girdle, their entire pelvis is actually rotating. That being different from true hip rotation. Usually I tell people 1 foot off the ground and give yourself a little hokey pokey, and what are you actually feeling in that hip socket? And usually they'll make a face, and what they're really feeling is the head of your femur rolling around in that hip socket. So that being true hip rotation versus what we could see superficially is a lot of pelvic rotation. Muscularly, the difference between the two, you look at people like a softball or a baseball player, softball player in the batter's box. You look at somebody maybe throwing a shot put. They're getting a lot of true hip rotation when that back foot is on the ground. And what the benefits of that is a lot more muscular activation. So you look at all the muscles in the hip, all the glutes, hamstrings. Again, you sinking down into that heel, that back heel is activating all that. As opposed to if someone perhaps just gets a ton of pelvic rotation, that right knee, the back knee really straightens out. You're not going to get as much to push off of that back foot, because it tends to shut those muscles down, and you're not getting the same effects of it. So again, you're going to see style differences. Some players almost fully extend that back knee. Other players keep it pretty active and pretty bent throughout. It's a style thing. You could still create power. Either way, again, just learning how to understand your body and how your build might be different than the next player. But everybody does have a combination of the both for sure. You'll see, the stats out there, average tour player has X amount of pelvic rotation, and then internally, you could tell that there is some true hip rotation happening at the same time, because you could see those muscles being flexed and working hard to give them something to push off of and get laterally first before they can start the rotation of their pelvis and their hip in their downswing as well.
Sure. So in other words, also, like if you were just to stand straight and turn, then that would be pelvic rotation.
You would be seeing. Yeah.
Right? And then if you're almost kind of like a sitting type of a situation, now you're starting to get hip rotation too. That ball and socket in there is starting to rotate. And so then as the pelvic turns and that little seated action happens, now there's more hip rotation, which again gets that weight in the golf swing a little bit more on that back heel, and allows them to create a little bit more of that jump up, push off, to engage more power. Same as if a shot put thrower, he's gonna squat and he's gonna push off the ground, and that's kind of like the relation to ground force. He's pushing force into the ground is pushing force back, and that's where he's gaining his power. Same thing here in the golf swing.
For sure. And just thinking a great way to start to feel that and still remain in a golf posture. A good drill that I do with a lot of people. Again, we'll just use righties as an excuse or as an example. Kind of take the left foot out of it. So you're just, again, you can only focus on that back foot. If I'm standing there, single leg, and I'm going to just remain in my golf posture and just go into a backswing kind of motion, you're going to feel a good pull start to happen across that right hip. And if you are pressure-wise a little bit further back into your heel, you'll definitely start to feel hamstrings and glutes get involved in that. And then if you want, just lightly place that left foot down. And for a lot of players there, that's the top of your backswing. Just to, again, bring awareness to, oh, wow, that's usually kind of an eye-opener for a lot of players. That's what I want to feel, my lower body-wise and at the top of my backswing. And I would say it's slightly overcooked, but yeah, I do want you to be that aware of that as potential power that I have stored up now in my workhorse and in my right side or my trail side for yourself.
Now, what muscle groups do you think are best to work on for the average player to help engage that and to strengthen it and make it so that it can be more powerful?
Sure. I mean, I'm a huge kind of balance between ab and adductors, so a lot of lateral and medial movement, whether you're doing kind of bands around your feet, doing some sidewalks like that, staying nice and low, doing almost like a crab walk from side to side, really strengthen hips, glute medius, glute minimus, to kind of the rotators and some of the abductors on the outside, and then doing things like a wall sit and a ball in between your knees, where your kind of quads are still active, but you're getting the adductors involved there. So kind of training them just to be balanced laterally and medially with them. And then, I mean, hamstrings and glutes. I'm always harping on my players, stay in your heels when we're doing these kind of things. Again, from a balance perspective and just to get, more used to feeling those muscles more often. We're also forward-moving creatures. A lot of the other sports that we play really train your brain and your body to be that much more in the balls of your feet and in your toes. And we just know for golf, if you get too deep in your toes, that really tends to shut down the workhorse. So it's tough for me to shift laterally. It's really hard for me to rotate my pelvis and my hips if I'm too into my toes as well. So anything that I'm doing, whether it's, like those rotational walks that I was just talking about, or if we're doing some kind of ball slam or squats or sidewalks, anything like that, really trying to get them comfortable being in the back kind of 2/3 of their foot, maybe from, right behind the ball of your feet, arch back into your heel, just kind of training yourself to get comfortable there to start to fire those big muscles again, hamstrings, glutes, and some hip.
Sure. So the best way for players to really learn all these things is to come and see you personally down here in Naples. What happens if they can't see you personally? Is there ways that you can work with players who are, let's say, in Idaho?
Sure, absolutely.
And they want to get that information, but they can't fly down here. It's just infeasible with their schedule or the price point for them by the time they come down. And they want to work with you for over a period of time. What's a good way for them to do that?
Sure. So, just as we're speaking now, the gift of technology lets us, I could basically walk somebody through an assessment. Sure, I would prefer to have, eyes actually on them and maybe hands to, make sure that they're feeling the right things and getting into the right positions and not kind of getting out of whack and for somewhat safety reasons, I'd say. But definitely we're able to now start to do assessments via Skype, via FaceTime, whatever it may be, virtually. And I very much do give remote programs out to where even if the player wants to go through the entire workout in front of me, where I could just kind of sit here and just say, make sure you're feeling this right now, you're staying here, holding this steady while this is moving, that kind of thing. So again, obviously prefer to have them personally in front of you, but we definitely do have the options now via our Impact Zone, our Go programs that we have as well, where we can do sessions remotely. I could send exercises, drills remotely, that kind of thing through our Edify programs and everything else. So absolutely, it's an option now.
So the folks who are out there who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Go ahead, give us a call at work. That'd be the best way. Everybody's phone rings when you call in. Either that or go ahead and you could drop me an email, ekussoff@impactzonegolf.com, Kussoff. either way, I'd be glad to get in contact with anybody that's looking to get more information, to get more involved, and to get a little bit better of understanding of how their body could potentially be making them a little more efficient and a little bit more pain-free too in their golf swing.
Great. And so before we go, I just want to ask you one question.
Sure.
And this is our parting question now this year.
All right, fair enough.
And that is, if you had a book that you could recommend for any of our listening audience, what book would it be? And it doesn't necessarily have to be golf. It could be on fitness, it could be on nutrition, it could be really anything that you think would be a good read for them that could help them improve either physically, mentally, or exponentially in their golf game.
Sure. I mean, not to sound biased by any means, but I mean, where I got my start and how I really got involved in all this would be Joey D's book. It's all about the golf body. It's all about the movements. I still use a lot of that in my teaching right now. I rely heavily on that. I stay in good contact with them still. But there's a lot of really great stuff, easy to digest, makes sense, good pictures, well written. Him and Steve Steinberg did a great job with that book, and I would highly recommend players get their hands on that just to get a real good sense of how they could be better using their golf body, and then kind of crossing over, you're going to start to see some everyday health benefits from that as well, just talking about different planes of movement and just how you're getting around during the day as well. So there's a lot of good benefits in that book. I would definitely tell people to check that one out.
What's the title of that book?
The title of that book, now you're really testing me. I feel bad. But I think it's something, your golf body. If I still had my copy, I think I'll let you know. You're testing me here now. You edit this or anything like that, Bern, or what?
Well, we can edit it. It's not a big deal. But so you look it up. Go ahead and look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. This is why you wear helmets when you're skiing, so when you hit your head and you get your concussions, then you can remember things a little bit better. Let's do this. Come on now. That's it. Fix your body, fix your swing. Oh, I should have known that. But yeah, fix your body, fix your swing. I definitely recommend players.
By Joey D.
By Joey D. Yep, Joey D, Steve Steinberg were the ones that came out with that book. And again, I'd highly recommend that players get their hands on it and give it a read. And just mindfulness, awareness is kind of the key as far as kind of foundation, step one in understanding your golf body a little bit more. Not necessarily just getting in the gym and start throwing weights around, throwing balls around and doing that kind of thing. First 2-3 weeks of anything that I'm doing with people, really low weight, a lot of body weight kind of things. But again, just getting a better sense and understanding for what your body's doing and what you're feeling and what's actually moving in your swing and in your body versus what you think may be moving.
Great. Well, it's great having you with us, and I know that we're going to meet again very shortly.
Sure. I'll see you tomorrow.
But what we always say in parting is, until we meet again, keep it in the short grass.
Keep it in the short stuff. I love it. All right, thanks for having me, Bern.
All right, take care.
You too.
You've been listening to Breaking Par with your host, Bernard Sheridan. Follow us on Twitter @BreakingPar and on Facebook @Par Breakers Golf Academy. Until next week, try to keep it on the short grass.